It was supposed to be a simple, relaxing evening, just me, my backyard, and a movie under the stars. But little did I know, I was about to run into some serious trouble with the HOA. One evening, while setting up my projector and speakers, I was interrupted by none other than the infamous HOA Karen. Apparently, she didn't like the idea of a projector being set up in my yard. Without warning, she came marching over, telling me that my setup violated some vague community guidelines. At first, I was confused. It was just a projector, right? How could that be such a big deal? But Karen wasn't backing down. She started talking about fines, threatening to report me, and insisting I remove it immediately. But what she didn't know was that this wasn't just any projector. It was part of my home theater system. This wasn't some temporary setup for a movie night. This was my entire entertainment system. So, what was I supposed to do now? Was I really about to get dragged into a battle over something so small? Stay tuned, because what happened next will leave you questioning the real power of these HOA rules. As Karen stood there, arms crossed, glaring at my setup, I couldn't help but wonder what she thought she was going to achieve. Was she really going to make me take down a projector that I used almost every weekend? I've been living in this neighborhood for years, and I never had a problem before. It wasn't like I was hosting a huge event or blasting music at midnight. I was simply enjoying a quiet night outdoors, like so many of my neighbors did, except, apparently, Karen had decided that my particular way of relaxing wasn't acceptable. The more she talked, the more frustrated I became. Her arguments were all over the place, bouncing between violating property aesthetics and not following HOA rules. But when I asked her for specifics, she couldn't provide any. It felt like she was just making things up as she went along. The strangest part, she seemed so sure of herself, like she had the power to just walk into my backyard and dictate what I could or couldn't do. I tried to stay calm, explaining that this was a home theater system I'd invested in and that it wasn't just a projector for one night. But she wasn't having it. In fact, she made it clear that if I didn't take it down, I'd be facing a hefty fine. I was shocked. Was this really happening? I stood there, trying to wrap my mind around what she was saying. The HOA had always been a bit overbearing, but I'd never experienced anything like this before. Karen was relentless, her voice rising as she accused me of breaking the rules and disturbing the neighborhood peace. Her tone made it clear that she wasn't going to let this slide. It wasn't just about the projector. It was about asserting control, about showing that she could have the final say on what everyone did in their own homes. I tried to stay calm, but her attitude was wearing me down. As she went on and on about how my setup looked out of place and might set a bad precedent, I felt like I was losing any chance at a reasonable conversation. But something struck me. Karen didn't even live next door. She was one of those HOA board members who made it their mission to enforce every tiny rule, yet she didn't have to deal with the consequences of her decisions. It was easy for her to complain from a distance. I tried to explain that I wasn't doing anything wrong, that this was my home, and I had every right to enjoy my backyard the way I wanted. But Karen wasn't listening. Her eyes were already scanning the neighborhood, probably imagining all the ways this could turn into a bigger issue. It was like she was looking for a reason to escalate this. My heart started pounding. Was this really how things were going to go down? Would she drag me into a full-blown battle over something as simple as a movie night? I had no idea how far she was willing to take this, and that made the whole situation even more unsettling. I could feel the tension thickening in the air, and the more Karen went on, the more it started to feel like she wasn't just upset about my projector, she was out to get me. There was this smug satisfaction in her voice, like she'd already won. The conversation had stopped being about the actual issue and had turned into a power struggle. I started questioning everything. Had I missed something? Were there actually rules I didn't know about? Was I really in the wrong here? Karen kept repeating the same lines, and with each one, I could feel my frustration building. I wasn't about to just roll over and take it, but it was hard to stay calm when all she was offering were vague threats. "I'm calling the board," she said, her eyes narrowing as she pulled out her phone. "If you don't comply, you'll face the consequences." My stomach dropped. I knew the HOA had the power to fine, but how far were they willing to go? Was this just the beginning of something bigger? I glanced around, almost expecting the neighbors to start gathering, maybe even taking sides. It was strange. This wasn't a huge deal, but Karen was making it feel like I was on the edge of a full-blown war over my own backyard. As Karen walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. I needed to figure out how to handle this. I had to be prepared for what was coming next. My mind raced with questions. Would I lose this battle? Could I stand up to the HOA? Or was I about to be steamrolled? Every step she took away from me felt like she was sealing my fate, but I couldn't just let it happen without a fight. As Karen walked away, her phone already pressed to her ear, I felt this strange sense of dread settle over me. I knew I couldn't just let this go. The HOA was something I had to deal with for the sake of my home, but what if Karen was right? What if I had unwittingly broken some obscure rule? My thoughts were interrupted by the sudden sound of a car pulling into the driveway next door. My neighbor, Rick. He got out of his car, looking like he'd just finished a long day's work, but as soon as he saw me standing there, his face shifted. He looked concerned. I didn't have time to ask him what was going on before we came over. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low, like he was trying to gauge the situation. I nodded, trying to keep it together, but my mind was still racing. Rick leaned in a little closer, glancing around to make sure Karen was out of earshot, then whispered, "I overheard her talking to the HOA board earlier. She's not just after your projector. She's trying to make a case against anyone who's using outdoor equipment like that." I froze. My heart skipped a beat. Was she really planning to take this further than just my backyard? It was one thing to be upset over my setup, but now it seemed like Karen was pushing for something bigger, something that could affect everyone in the neighborhood. She was trying to make it look like a bigger issue, like she was defending the community standards from anyone who dared to step outside the box. My stomach twisted. If she succeeded in rallying the board behind her, this could get ugly, fast. Rick's voice lowered even more, his eyes flicking nervously around. "I think she's setting you up to be the example, the first one they go after. If she can push you out, she might have a better shot at making these rules even stricter." The weight of what he said sank in. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone in this neighborhood who enjoyed their backyard the way I did. What had started as a movie night was quickly spiraling into a full-scale fight over freedom, control, and who really had the power to make the rules in our own homes. And now I was at the center of it. The next day, the HOA board meeting was scheduled, and I knew it was time to face the music. Rick had warned me that Karen was planning to bring up the projector issue, but I didn't expect it to be so much worse. When I walked into the meeting, I could feel all eyes on me, some with judgment, others with curiosity. Karen was sitting at the front, smug as ever, ready to take me down. I had no idea how far she had gone to push this, but one thing was clear. She wasn't going to stop until she had complete control over everyone's backyard. The meeting dragged on with a few other minor complaints, but I knew my moment was coming. Finally, Karen stood up, all too eager to speak. She went on about how my outdoor setup was a disruption, arguing that it set a bad example for the neighborhood. As she finished, the room went quiet, and I could feel my pulse racing. It was my turn now. I stood up, took a deep breath, and began explaining that this wasn't just some casual movie night. This was my home theater system, an investment I'd made to enhance my life, not to make trouble. I pointed out that I'd been living in the neighborhood for years, and there had never been any issue until Karen decided to make it one. The more I spoke, the more I realized that the board members didn't seem as enthusiastic about her crusade as she had hoped. Some looked uncomfortable, shifting in their seats, while others seemed to be reconsidering the validity of her complaints. Just as I thought I might have made some headway, Karen pulled out a piece of paper from her folder. "I have here a petition from several neighbors who agree with my stance," she said, holding it up like a trophy. I felt a knot in my stomach. she had gone to this extent. But then something unexpected happened. Rick, who had quietly sat through the whole meeting, stood up. "I signed that petition," he said, his voice steady. "But I didn't realize Karen was turning this into something personal. I thought we were just talking about the projector, not making it a community-wide issue. I regret signing it now." The room fell silent. Karen's face twisted with anger, and she glared at Rick, but it was too late. Another neighbor, a woman I'd never spoken to before, stood up and added, "I didn't sign that petition either. I just want to enjoy my yard in peace. We're all in this together." One by one, others started speaking out, siding with me, explaining that Karen was overstepping and trying to control things that weren't hers to control. It was clear that the board was losing confidence in her argument. When the vote came, it was almost unanimous. No fines, no rules against outdoor setups like mine. Karen's campaign had crumbled. But just as I was about to breathe a sigh of relief, something unexpected happened. Karen, her face reddened with fury, slammed her hand down on the table. "This isn't over," she spat. "You may have won today, but I'm going to find a way to make you regret this." I couldn't help but smile, knowing that for now I had won. But with her last words hanging in the air, I had a feeling this wouldn't be the last time I'd have to face off with Karen. And in that moment, I realized that while I'd stood my ground, I had just entered a new chapter of this ongoing battle. As the meeting ended, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I'd stood my ground, and it seemed like Karen's attempt to control the neighborhood had backfired. The HOA board had made it clear that there were no grounds for any action against me. I walked out of that room with my head high, knowing I had fought for my rights and won. Over the next few days, things slowly started to return to normal. The projector was back up in my yard for the next movie night, and the neighbors seemed more supportive than ever, some even stopping by to chat and share their own backyard stories. It was a reminder that sometimes standing up for yourself can spark a bigger change in the community. Karen, on the other hand, didn't back down entirely. She continued to make things difficult with her board member influence, but it was clear that her power had been limited. People had seen her true colors, and while she wasn't out of the picture, she was no longer the force she once was. In the end, I realized this story wasn't just about a projector or a movie night. It was about the importance of standing up for what's right and not letting someone else dictate your life. And though Karen's not going anywhere anytime soon, I'd made one thing clear: my backyard, my rules.